NFC South, we have the defending Super Bowl champion Tampa Bay Buccaneers. They're running it back. And by running it back, they're literally, they lost a couple key players, maybe a starter or so. They legit are running this team back, looking to go Super Bowl number 2 in a row, get Tom Brady, his 8th ring? Or more. I lost count how many Super Bowls Tom Brady's won. He's won so many. But the Bucs are back, and they're easily the favorite in this division. They're the favorite in the NFC. Legit favorite year all around. And you got Tom Brady, doesn't look like he's slowing down. You got stud receivers and Godwin and Evans, and you got Gronk and Brate and O.J. Howard coming back, and Humphrey. It is what it, they just keep adding people. You had a good team last year, and then you still had the free agency in the draft. And so the Buccaneers reloaded and still added a few pieces. Not only are they good, and they got a good defense, they got a good offense, they also have a pretty easy schedule. They have one of the easier schedules in the league. And so you kind of add that to it. I don't think their division's the greatest. The Falcons aren't going to be very good this year. The Panthers probably are still a building team. What are the Saints going to be without Drew Brees? And so I think they cruise easily in this division, set themselves up with that number 1 seed. And we're going to, let's see how far Tom Brady can take them again. And, and as they literally run it back. All right, the team after the Bucs is I think the Saints. And here's a team, once again, they were the 2 seed last year. And they were the 2 seed last year. They're back, but no Drew Brees. And Drew Brees, retired because, he was starting to become a shell of himself. He was still talented. Drew Brees was elite, and he stopped being so elite last year. And so he's gone. They're running it with Jameis Winston, and I'm glad that they made that decision to go with Winston over Hill. I think Winston is a better quarterback, and that allows Taysom Hill to kind of be that multi-use talent and, be the tight end, be the running back, be the receiver, and that's what I think he's best suited as. And Winston has his flaws. He did have a lot of turnovers with the Buccaneers, but I think a lot of that was predicated on their offenses. Dirk Cutter and Bruce Arians were downfield passing attack teams. And so Winston was having to throw the ball deep and push the ball into tough situations, and, it led to turnovers. And I think playing with Sean Payton and more of their quick attack, I think is going to suit Winston better, and he's going to be able to show off his talent. And I think he'll have success. He's not Drew Brees, but who is Drew Brees out there besides Drew Brees? And so they're going to have some talent. But the problem is they still have some holes. Right? One of the biggest holes, and I've been harping on this for the last several years, is they really haven't addressed that wide receiver position. They have Michael Thomas, kind of right now. And then who else do they have besides him? Traquan Smith hasn't panned out. Marquez Callaway is showing flashes, is he going to be able to step up? Emmanuel Sanders, who they had last year, wasn't able to kind of take him to, be that true number 2. So Winston's going to have to do this with not a whole ton of weapons outside of Alvin Kamara. And as I mentioned, they kind of have Michael Thomas because he's out right now. He waited to have his surgery until training camp. And so who knows when he'll be back. They're not happy with him. He's obviously, if you're not happy with the franchise, you're not, if things are great with you and your team, you're not waiting till the training camp starts to have your surgery. So the offense might struggle at first. So just because there's not a ton of weapons outside of Alvin Kamara, especially with Michael Thomas being hurt. And then defensively, they've really improved over the last several years, and they got a lot of those guys back. But it's still a team that's supposed to be built around their offense. And so I think if that offense struggles, it's going to be tough for that defense. You got Marcus Davenport. They drafted Peyton Turner in the first round. You still got Cam Jordan, who's a stud. Linebackers, they're okay. But, if you're relying on Alec Anzalone, that tells you how good much depth you have in that linebacking core. All right, another team in this division is the Panthers. I have them as my number 3 team, and it'll be interesting to see how they do with Sam Darnold. When Sam Darnold came into the draft from USC, he was thought to be the clear number 1 quarterback, and I know Baker Mayfield ended up being the number 1 pick, and has outplayed Sam Darnold. A lot of people thought that Darnold was the guy in that draft, and that was the same draft with Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, and so he wasn't set up for success in New York with the Jets. They didn't draft any weapons. They didn't add any weapons in free agency. The offensive line was a mess, and he struggled. And that's one of the reasons why, I'm kind of wanting quarterbacks to kind of wait. Like, say, Justin Fields, the offensive line's not the greatest. You don't want him to get hit a lot because, like Sam Darnold, he starts seeing ghosts. And so with Sam Darnold in Carolina, I'm anxious to see how he does. Can he, this is, in all reality, is his second chance. Not a lot of quarterbacks get this second chance where they go from a team that's crappy to a team that's kind of got some talent. Now, Carolina's offensive line isn't great, but it's better than what Darnold had in New York. Darnold's got good receivers. He's got Robbie Anderson, who, I guess he kind of had him in Carolina, but Robbie Anderson was the only guy in New York. Now it's him and DJ Moore, and they got Terrace Marshall, who's been playing well this preseason. And most importantly, he doesn't have Adam Gase. Instead, he's got Joe Brady, who, is considered one of the best young offensive minds out there. And last year, the Panthers had Teddy Bridgewater, who is a talented quarterback, probably the best backup quarterback in the NFL. And they had him as their starter, and he had a solid year. And Darnold physically has better traits than Teddy Bridgewater, but can he have the mental side of the game that Bridgewater had? Okay? And so it will be interesting to see. Can Darnold live up to the hype that he had coming out of USC? Because he had some good years at USC, and he looked like a guy that could be the number 1 overall pick and could be a franchise quarterback. And I think he's going to get a shot in Carolina. Got Christian McCaffrey too. We can't forget about him to really do well. And you got a defense that's continuing to evolve. They've gone real heavy on rookies. They've invested a lot of their draft picks in them. Derek Brown. You've got Brian Burns, who they drafted a couple years ago. You've got Jeremy Chin. You drafted J.C. Horn this year to go with Jackson on the other side. And so they've got a lot of young talent on that defense. If those guys continue to develop and Sam Darnold has a Ryan Tannehill type revolution of his career getting away from Adam Gase, I wouldn't be shocked if the Panthers finished ahead of the Saints. I don't think the Saints or the Panthers are playoff caliber teams. Saints might be, but I wouldn't be shocked if the Panthers finished second in this division. And then rounding it out in the AFC South, you have the Atlanta Falcons. Here's the team that picked 4th last year in the draft. And they ended up picking a tight end over the quarterback. I thought Justin Fields would be this pick. Now, they're a little cap-strapped. They've got a lot of big contracts. They got out of the Julio contract. I thought they might try to get out of the Matt Ryan contract. That's why I thought maybe take a quarterback there in Justin Fields. Thought really trade back and add additional picks and add some youth to this team. But they felt like they couldn't move on from Matt Ryan. And so they take Kyle Pitts, who I really like. I thought Kyle Pitts was an elite prospect. You don't see tight ends like him. You used to seeing these T.J. Hawkinsons, these Hunter Henrys, these Mark Andrews, where they're big guys and they run and they use their body to seal off defenders on the backside. Whereas Kyle Pitts is this athletic freak where he can run past you, he can jump above you, he can still shield you off and run and catch. But tight ends always take time to develop, and it was if you didn't go quarterback and you didn't go full rebuild, I don't know if this half rebuild is going to work. Maybe if you would have kept Julio, and I get that they moved on from him for cap reasons, but I think that would have helped with Pitts' development because you got Calvin Ridley, who's going to be a stud. You've got Julio, and then you got Pitts, and I think that would allow Pitts to kind of develop a little bit better. Now Julio's gone, and Pitts gets thrust into that spotlight along with Calvin Ridley. And I think having Calvin Ridley is still going to help, but you're still going to have an added focus on Kyle Pitts. And if he develops like most tight ends, it's going to be about year 2 or 3 before we really start to see him. Outside of that, there's a lot of issues still. Offensive line still not the greatest. There's talk that they could take Penei Sewell there before they landed on Pitts. The defense is suspect. This team seems to be in a mess. And I think this is a team that, probably should have gone full rebuild, but they didn't. So it'll be curious to see how they do with Arthur Smith as their new head coach. And, I think this is a team that's probably picking in the top 10. I think they'll maybe do a little bit better than last year, but how much better can they do?